So in my previous video, I went over what is my favorite build of Season 11, that being a boulder druid, and that version of the build was a bit more focused on being as strong as possible. So if you want to do highest put runs you can possibly do, that video is what you want to look at. But this version is going to be a bit more of a speed farming version. There are only a handful of changes, but the changes we made this build significantly more fun to play. You're obviously just a lot faster. You can do pretty much any content much more easily. And one of the best parts about the boulder druid now is you can cast pretty much every ability while moving. And the few changes we made just play so heavily into that strength that this may be my favorite druid build in Diablo 4's entire history. It is so fun to play. Let's start off with our uniques and our mythics. For our most important unique, you have your necklace, which is the dolmen stone. So casting boulder while hurricane is active causes the boulder to rotate around you instead. Boulder's damage is increased by up to 50% for each boulder rotating. You have 10 boulders. So the entirety of this build is focused around having hurricane up 100% of the time and spam casting boulder that all get trapped in your hurricane and just deal a ton of damage. You basically become a bulldozer because, as mentioned, you can just walk around while using all of your abilities. And when you add in all these different movement mechanics, it can get pretty crazy. And then for our other uniques, we have Vassalish's Prayer for your helmet slot. Your Earth skills are now also werebear skills and fortify you for some amount of your max life. You also need this for the build to actually work. So your Earth skills are now werebear skills. That's pretty important for the build to actually work as well. And then we have Tabal to Will for our final unique. This is just really good for stats. Damage increase after being unstoppable, and then crit chance and attack speed are all very good for this build. And then for our mythics, using Shroud of False Death +1 all passives is good for pretty much every build in the game, but the all stats increase is also very good to get the secondary bonuses of all the rare notes throughout your Paragon boards. So it's just, again, really good for stat increases. Then we have Ring of Starless Skies, which spending your primary resource reduces its cost by 10% up to 50 and its damage. And then all the stats on this are also very good. Core skill increase, attack speed, crit chance, all very good for the build. So both of our mythics are basically just really good stat sticks. And then we have our skill tree, 1 point to claw. You do actually use this to stack up some of our passives. Then we're going down 1 point to earthen bulwark, just a big barrier. Upgrade 1 makes you unstoppable. Upgrade 2 fortifies you. Those are just really good for survivability and for unstoppable. That's actually pretty important. Then we go down 1 point to hurricane, which obviously is super important to hold all of our boulders in. Upgrade 1 slows enemies. Upgrade 2 makes enemies deal less damage. Then 5 points in a boulder, our main damaging ability. Upgrade 1 when boulder overpowers, enemies are stunned. Then upgrade 2, a boulder now poisons anything it hits, and this is the primary way we poison things, which will give us a bunch of additional scaling. Now we don't have a point into it, but we are using trample, and this will play pretty heavily once we get into our runes. This is good for more unstoppable, more movement, and like I mentioned, one of our runes will heavily be buffed up by using trample. And since you get +2 wraith skills from our dolmen stone, which you already need, you can use this for free without putting an additional point into it, so we get more points for some passives. And then we have 4 points into petrify. We just used a lot of our last points to upgrade this more to have a reduced cooldown. This just CCs everything around you. Upgrade 1 makes enemies take increased critical strike damage from petrified enemies. Bosses take even more. And then upgrade 2, when you kill an enemy that's petrified, reduces cooldown. When you hit a boss with it, reduces cooldown even more. Now, when using Petrify, we also reset all of our other cooldowns. So this will actually help with cycling all of our abilities, so we can just have all of our abilities up much more frequently. And then we have our passives, 1 to Heart of the Wild to get 3 into Wild Impulses. Your core skills cost more but deal more damage. Also, our boulder is a core skill from one of our legendary aspects. Then we go down, we have 3 into Backlash, increased damage after using a defensive, 3 into Chestral Fortitude for increased resistances, 3 into Vigilance for a DR after using a defensive, and Earthen Bulwark has a pretty low cooldown at a baseline right now, and we reset it when we use our ultimate, so we should be able to keep these passives procced a good amount of the time. Also, with our rune set, one of our things through one of our runes actually procs these passives as well. And then we have 3 into Pharaoh Aptitude, increased damage while healthy, even more when above 100% move speed. Then we have 3 into Crushing Earth. Earth skills do increase damage to CC'd enemies. 3 into Stone Guard, increased damage while fortified. And if you're using this build without having Shroud of False Death already, make sure to put 1 point into Stone Guard. When your Earth skills crit, they fortify you for a small amount, but when you have Shroud of False Death, you get 1 point into this. Then we have 3 into Mending, primarily for the increased max life. 1 into neurotoxin, poison enemies are slowed. 3 into toxic claws, increase poison damage. 3 into envenom, increase critical strike damage against poison enemies. Then 3 into defiance, nature skills deal increased damage to elites. 3 into natural disaster, your skills deal increased damage to vulnerable. And 3 into resonance, nature skills do increased damage. This is tripled if you do like an earth skill, storm skill, and back and forth. So this will give us that triple benefit sometimes after we hurricane into our boulder. Then 3 into catastrophe, increased damage after using your ultimate, which we will have up a lot because of its cooldown reductions. Then 3 into quick shift, increased damage that stacks up when going into different animal forms. So basically all you do is claw, boulder, claw, boulder, claw, boulder 6 times. Then when you're in any animal form, which you'll always be in werebear, this stays stacked up. Same for heightened senses. When you go into werebear, gain damage reduction, and werewolf gain increased movement speed. And then when you're in any animal form, the duration doesn't go down. Then finally for our capstone, Urzine strength, increased max life, increased damage, and increased overpowered damage. So just massive buffs when we're in werebear. And then we have our Paragon boards. Board 1 is Earth and Sky, a bonus to magic nodes within range. The secondary is nature skills do increased damage to CC'd or vulnerable enemies. The legendary is increased nature magic skill damage. The next board we're going to be taking is Survival Instincts. While in werebear, deal increased damage, increase further at max life. Then you deal increased overpower damage depending on the difference of life between you and the enemy. So you stay high health, they get lower, you deal more overpowered damage. And then we have Keeper, a bonus to rare nodes within range. The secondaries, you deal increased non-physical damage. The legendaries increase non-physical damage. Then the next board is going to be Other Devastation. Your skills deal increased critical strike damage. The glyph we're taking is Dominate for increased overpower damage. The secondary is when you overpower, the enemies take increased damage from you. The legendaries increase overpower damage. The next board is Heightened Malice. When a poison enemy is near you, deal increased damage. This is further increased for more enemies. The glyph we're taking is Spirit for increased critical strike damage. Then the secondary, when you crit an enemy, they take increased damage from you, stacking up. The legendary is increased critical strike damage. Then the final board, Constricted Tendrils, just more damage versus poison enemies. It also has a lucky hit to poison. We don't really care about that. And then Fang and Claw for the glyph, another bonus to magic nodes within range. The secondary is when in werebear, close enemies take more damage from you. The legendary is increased shapeshift damage. Then we have our Spirit Boons, Wariness to take reduced damage from elites. We have Avian Wraith for increased critical strike damage. Now, I'm taking swooping attacks for increased attack speed, which is really nice. Now, if you're doing content and you're dying, you can go over to Iron Feather, but as a speed farming build, this isn't really made for doing like high tier pit pushing or anything like that. Then Energize, a lucky hit, dealing damage is a chance to restore 100 spirit. Then Obsidian Slam, every 6 casted attack will cause your next Earth skill to overpower. Then we have our Mercenaries. I'm just using Subo for Seeker. This helps quite a lot for speed farming actually. Then the passive we're taking are Ready at Hand. Direct damage to an elite gives you increased movement speed. Now if you already have the capped out move speed increases, you don't need this. I am slightly off, so there's a good chance if you have all this gear you'll probably already have cap move speed. Then finally Opening Fire, you deal increased critical strike damage against enemies hit by Subo's covering fire. Then for our divine gifts, the top section, Essence of Lies to 4 to 5 per second. The right section, Essence of Scream, gains increased resistances. The bottom section, Essence of Sin for increased armor. The left section, Essence of Pain. When you get injured, you gain a max barrier with a 20-second cooldown. Then we have our gear, starting with our gems. In 2 pieces of armor, you want willpower gems. In your jewelry, you just want diamond gems for resist all. And then for our rune sets, and this is a pretty big change to the build and just makes the build so much more fun to play. So first off, we have the really important one. We have a Bak Ja, so travel 35 meters, and that will replace your evade with the Sorcerer's Teleport, which will also make you unstoppable, which is really nice. But the Sorcerer's Teleport is a defensive skill, which will proc some of the passives we went over. But what's really, really nice with this rune set is you're just traveling to get this effect, and we never stop moving because we can cast pretty much all of our abilities while moving. Our main damaging ability is Boulder. We can spam it while moving. So we're constantly getting these teleports. We can use them everywhere, but mixed out with our trample is also considered movement. And what's super nice when you mix this all together is our trample will help us proc more teleports. Since our boulders are trapped in our hurricane, we actually have basically all of our damage being done while we're in our trample movement. So you can trample across a room and your boulders will hit everything as you go. And it's just a super good feeling build to use with these new movement abilities. The other rune set is going to be Tam Cry. So cast a non-channel core skill, so Boulder, and this will invoke this Spiritborn's Vortex skill, pulling everything in. So this just helps with pulling stuff to us. We're always spamming boulders, so this will proc pretty consistently as well. And then we have our legendary aspects on our two-handed weapon. We have deal increased poison damage, and while shapeshift, your direct damage is converted into poison damage. So now all of our damage is poison, even from our boulder, which just helps scale a bunch of additional damage. Then for our couple offensive aspects, on one of them, you're going to want boulder is now a core skill and costs 40 spirit to cast and deals more damage than normal. This is one of the main things you need for the build to work. So boulder is now a core skill, so it's just spammable. And because of a bunch of our things mixed together, this basically doesn't cost spirit. We never run out of spirit, even though it does actually use spirit to proc some of our effects. Our final offensive aspect, your core skills deal increased damage based upon your fortify, so just a massive damage increase. Then our final legendary aspect is going to be on our boots. While Hurricane is active, which will be 100% of the time, gain +5 ranks to your shapeshifting skills, which will be basically all of our skills, so that's a pretty big damage increase as well. And then for a few of the really important stats. So first off, since this is a speed farming build, you want capped out movement speed increases. Now, if you get even decent rolls on the movement speed while Hurricane is active on your Dolmen Stone and the movement speed roll on your boots, which you want, you can get capped out movement speed. Like I said, I am slightly off. So you may be slightly off just both of those, but both of those being mixed together will give you most of your move speed. Then you will also get some from some of our passives as well. Now, another thing that is super important is on your weapon. You want a lucky hit to make enemies vulnerable, to make sure they're always vulnerable. You want the tempering roll for chance for boulder to deal double damage. It's going to be really important. Now, both of those you don't need above 100%. My weapon just got crazy quality roll from its sanctify. Usually you'll be around the 100% mark, which is what you want. But what's really important is the tempering roll on your ring. So casting Wrath skills restore 25 primary resource. So that is our boulder. Anytime we cast our boulder, it'll give us 25 primary resource here. This will be increased from some effects, but then we have things like resource cost reduction on a two-handed weapon. So basically you'll never see your spirit go down. Even though you are spending spirit, which will help proc some other effects, you never actually see it go down. So once you get this roll, basically free to never worry about spirit. You can spam boulder as fast as you possibly can. You're never going to run out. But that is the entirety of this speed farming boulder build. And like I mentioned, I think this may be my most fun build I've ever played on the Druid in the entirety of Diablo 4's history. This build is just so fun. It was a handful of seasons ago where they made boulder be able to be cast while moving, which makes every boulder build just so much more fun. Having these different rune combinations with everything you can do in this build now just makes it so fun. It feels like you never have to stop moving, which I think the only thing that you would really have to stop moving for is Petrify, because our Earthen Bulwark you can use while moving. I'm pretty sure Hurricane you could cast while moving, Boulder you can cast while moving, and Trample is a movement skill. Then we have all the other movement skills we have. We're pulling everything in, teleporting everywhere. Just an incredibly fun build that I would very much recommend. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.